crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I'm here with a card featuring Lawn Fawn. I am using the Lawn Fawn Winter Narwhal as well as the Lawn Fawn Seahorsin Around, and I will be using their Scripty Hello die cut border. To get started, I'm going to make this background. I actually wound up making two of this card, but I'm only showing the process for one. But once I had made the background as sort of a test to make sure that my idea worked, I thought, why not just create two of the cards, since it is a bit of a time-consuming card, but by creating two of it at the same time, it's faster than starting two complete cards. So anyway, I'm getting started with some Distress Oxide inks. I am smushing them onto an acrylic block that ordinarily I would use to put my stamps on. So just a stamp block. The size and the shape isn't too important, but by using a block, it gives you a bit more control over it. I am using cracked pistachio distressing for the top, and I am definitely just trying to create a really messy look, but I do want pretty good coverage. My goal is for there to be splotches that are darker and lighter to add some interest. And then next I'm going to go in with Mermaid Lagoon. I'm going to do the same thing where I just covered the whole thing with ink, and then I sprayed it with my Tim Holtz Distress sprayer, although of course any spray bottle will do. And I'm going to smush that on. I am over time going to go back over with different colors and try to add colors in different spots. So while generally the mermaid ink is in the center, I do try to put like just little touches of it into the cracked pistachio area. I am trying to get some blending and interest, but it's really just about having fun and getting just a cool look. You could do this with any sorts of colors. I am going for an ocean background, so I've chosen ocean colors, and I think it makes a great ocean background, but I think that you could do it with like literally any colors that you find to be fun and just make an interesting background to put your, little critters on. And then my last color is Salty Ocean. I am trying to make sure that I don't overwhelm any one color with any other color, because with Distress Oxide inks, being pigment inks, they will cover over each other. So when I'm adding a little bit of that Salty Ocean to the cracked pistachio, I am definitely waiting until there's almost nothing left on my stamp block, or even wiping some away, so that I'm not going to get a big giant blue splotch in my cracked pistachio area. Drying throughout the process can also be really helpful. So you can kind of see, do I have enough of this color at this point? And also, if you feel like you maybe got a little too much color in a particular area, you can, of course, just try to blot some of it up, and that will work to a certain extent while it's still wet. So here's where I'm going to go backwards and try to fill in. And now I'm second guessing whether that was, okay. My three colors, I made a mistake. I'm sorry, guys. It was cracked pistachio, peacock feathers, and mermaid lagoon. So top, cracked pistachio, middle, peacock feathers, bottom, mermaid lagoon, generally. But of course, I went back in and sort of mixed up the colors a little bit as I saw fit. So gonna kind of finally heat set that one last time once I'm happy with all of the colors. Here I felt like I maybe sort of overwhelmed the cracked pistachio, so I'm going with that. You see that I just have a cloth there on my work surface too that I'm just continuously using to wipe all this up. With this cloth will definitely get stained, but I rather have a couple cloths in my craft room than use too many baby wipes and things like that I have to just throw out. To me, I guess that's kind of a bit of a waste of money. So not that they're expensive, but I've kind of shown on my channel that I can be a little bit cheap about craft supplies. So here I'm going to do my Copic Coloring. I started with N1 and I laid that all over the Narwhal stamp. But I'm going to try to mimic the look that an actual Narwhal has. And I'm using the ends. If you don't have the ends, I would suggest the C's. I think that a cool gray would make sense for a Narwhal. You could have definitely used whatever grays you have on hand though, but actually the ends worked out well. I thought I didn't need them, but I do quite like them, to be honest. My general idea is that if you look at a picture of a narwhal, they have a dark gray back and a light gray to white tummy area, and so I'm trying to mimic that. They also have spots on them, and so I'm going to add spots to my critter. I know a lot of people like to add spots just for like interest in texture on a whole bunch of different kinds of animals, and I think that actually looks really cute, and I have done it from time to time, but in this case I'm actually very intentionally doing it just because it is like what a narwhal looks like. This is again where making 2 cards at once can be faster because I've already picked out all of the colors to use with the narwhal. I've already thought about the technique to use with the narwhal. So I am able to save some time by just like having those markers out and coloring the second one. But as I mentioned, a lot of that was done off camera. So here I saved the N7 for the spots because I wanted them to be even darker than anything else I colored, and N5 was previously my darkest marker. So here I add all the spots in with N7, and then I think after filming this, I decided he could have used a few more spots, so there might be some lighter spots on him as well at the end, like use a couple of N5 spots. But yeah, I just mostly wanted to sort of mimic that actual look that they have. Here I'm using R39, R37, and R35, and I'm going to use these same reds all throughout. Again, that idea that I can speed up my card making by making one color choice and then going back and coloring a bunch of things with that same color choice. I blended out the R39, but then I went back in and added just the tiniest line of R39 where the deepest shadows should be, and I didn't blend it out. And I think that that is a simple way of, if you feel like you may have over blended a bit and you may have lost some of your deep shadows, going in with that fine tip side of the marker and just making the tiniest line and then not touching it can really add a bit of depth and dimension there on your shadow areas. So I'm going to color the seahorses with that same set of colors, and to keep things simple, I'm actually going to use the N0 and C00 because I don't have an N, there actually isn't an N00, but using my lightest colors of gray to make him appear white. And that's because I'm just trying not to add too many colors. I actually am trying to avoid adding green to this. I think that the red will pop off the blue background really nicely. When I first intended to make this card, I wanted to have the hello, have a gnarly holiday sentiment, and I knew that was going to go across the card, and I thought that my sea critters would just go right on top of the card. But as you'll see, it very quickly turns into a shaker card, which was not my original intention. But here I am adding a bit of interest to the background because this is a holiday card. I personally like sparkle on my holiday cards, so I am spritzing it with some Sukaneko shimmer spray. It's not Sukaneko. It is linked in the video description, and it's just like the shimmer spritz. It's a really fine shimmery spritz. It's a personal favorite of mine. I've pretty much exclusively switched over to using like just that because it gives such a subtle shimmer. But as you see, I took an old box that someone had shipped something to me. I think it was an Amazon box. And I cut it up into something that basically protects my work surface from the shimmer. So I think that, Corin Wiskman? Sorry. Brain's not working too good right now. She's done it before too. Like I saw the idea from her to make the box, and I think she explains how to do it on her YouTube channel. And you can also buy a box, but I just figured why not just use a box I already had. So I've cut this frame from the stitched scallop dies, stitched scallop rectangles from Cat Scrappiness, and Then I used a never-ending rectangle, also from Cat Scrappiness, to cut out the inside. So I made it into a frame. It's not a frame die, but there's a lot of frame dies out there. I just personally, I don't know that I own any of them, so I just made my own. And here I'm taking the Hello die cuts, and I did something different than I normally do. I actually put adhesive behind the die cut before I cut it out. And I don't know if that was the right call. I find it so finicky, and even though I have a Gemini Junior, which cuts through thick stuff really well, a lot of times it doesn't seem to cut through adhesive. And so then I'm using my tweezers like I am now to pick out these little tiny bits, and everything's sticking to me. And sometimes I'm like, I think I would have just rather put glue down later. So I want my frame and my word to be red to match what I colored with. And so I'm using the R39 marker, because normally I don't have a lot of colored cardstock, and then finding a colored cardstock that coordinates perfectly is particularly a challenge. But in retrospect, I actually wound up with like a giant pack of Recollections 110-pound red, and that's where I'm more likely to actually have a color, like if Recollections sells it, because I don't like to buy very expensive cardstock. I usually just use my Copics to color it in, but they have nice quality thick cardstock. That's what I use for my Copic Coloring. So I kind of wish I would have die cut it all out of red cardstock that matched closely, because I think I could have found something in that pack that would have done the job. So here I have to apologize because I am super zoomed in. I think it was because I was coloring the hello and I wanted you to see that. And now I'm going to place my stamp where it says have a gnarly holiday, and you're not going to be able to see that at all. So sorry guys, but that's what I'm doing right now with my Misty. I am definitely wanting to do it with my Misty because I did use a watercolor paper for that background, which I should have said way back at the beginning, that it's not plain cardstock. Although in my experience, you could do it with plain cardstock. It might turn out slightly differently. It might curl a bit more and that kind of thing. So here I am stamping that sentiment from the set. I made sure that my placement of my frame and the placement of the hello, you can kind of see it there at the bottom, would make sense. And I used a red ink. If I did it again, I might not use the red ink just because it doesn't really stand out too much and I had to stamp it a few times, or maybe use a darker red ink. I did pick the Memento Rhubarb Dewdrop because I happen to have that color of ink and I don't have a ton of colors of ink. It's, like I have some that I've collected from card kits, and I got these 2 big Memento packs one time. So I'm a little bit limited in my selection of colored ink, but for the most part, it gets me through. So I'm not too worried about it. You can, though, use your Distress Oxide inks as stamping ink because you can stamp sentiments with them. It stamps nicely enough, especially if you're using something like the Misty, where you can know you'll get a good impression if you need to stamp a few times. So here's where I'm going to create the shaker. I have covered my frame with adhesive along the edge, and then I put in the plastic acetate sheet and I trimmed that off. I've cut some foam tape. As some of you who watch my channel know, I don't use foam tape to pop up my critters very often, but in general, I prefer to use foam tape on my shakers still, just because a lot of times if you're like here where I created my own frame, it would be a little bit tricky to die cut a few of them exactly the same. I might get a little shift in the rectangle or something like that. So you definitely could, instead of using foam tape, layer up the die cut that is creating your shaker window. But here foam tape was the easy choice. So that's what I went with. I did double layer it, so it's pretty thick. I definitely prefer for my shakers to be thick. I will just use extra postage if necessary, and I'm fine with that, but I like it to be thick because I like to put a lot of shaker material in there, and I like it to just look really full and be really fun. Like if I'm going to go to that length, I'm going to go all out kind of thing with my shakers. So I did put a little bit of embossing powder bag on this one that I filmed, and then for whatever reason, I didn't on the one I didn't film. And I will say the one that I did not use the embossing powder bag, my sequins stuck where I didn't want them. So I do think that that is an important step. If you feel like your sequins are getting stuck on the sides of your shaker card, I recommend you try the embossing powder bag and see if that helps, because in my experience, it makes a difference. So here I've peeled off all of the sticky backs. Then I am laying all of my sequins, and these are the Cat Scrappiness Retro Christmas sequins. I'm putting them down onto my card surface. I mean, it's not even a card yet, my card panel. Putting them down onto my card panel. This Retro Christmas was perfect because it had red, white, and this like teal color that matched my background perfectly. Unfortunately, I only had part of a bag left. So my second card has a different Cat Scrappiness, as the peppermint sprinkles. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what they're called, but they have little candy canes and also a very cute sprinkle mix. But this one was like perfect for an ocean Christmas card. And my my background hasn't been cut down at all. So it still is hanging over the edges of the shaker. I'm going to go in with my scissor and trim that because I would rather have a little extra space to work with and cut it off later than to try to be lining up the edges of my shaker exactly. Here I've also put down my Hello die. That's 3 thick, because if you remember earlier, I had 3 die cuts of it cut out, and I just try to give it a little bit more weight there. But again, I don't think I had to do that, and it was a little bit more finicky than I would have liked. So I also laid down the Hello die, and then I went in and I trimmed it just to the edges of the frame. Now, what I have done many times in the past, and what I see a lot of people do, is to put the critters inside the shaker and let the shaker material come over them. That look is great, but this time I decided I wanted to put them on the outside just to see the difference, because honestly, I feel like all the stuff inside shakes better because it's not getting caught behind the critters, and you can see the critters better, but they don't do the same peekaboo thing. So I don't know, that was just my personal choice this time. So that's it for my card today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more crafting tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I'll leave you links to the products that I mentioned in the video, as well as some other videos you might want to check out. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!